Welcome to this episode of the Astrology of Family Karma and Relationships podcast. I'm your host, Alexander Mallon, here with my wonderful co-host,
Sheila G., the guide on the side.
Today's episode will discuss election 2024. Biden is out and Kamala is in, and the winner is, that might be the theme, right? The show. So many people are wondering, what exactly is happening. Whether we're going to have Kamala or Trump as our next leader.
Yes, indeed.
Big times these, Sheila. So I'm looking, Sheila, at the chart of the U.S. To sort of start us off. July 4th, 1776. I like to use the Sibley chart. That is the signing chart at 5:10 p.m. when the Declaration of Independence was signed at 5:10 p.m. Philadelphia, July 4th, 1776. It gives us a 12 degrees Sagittarius rising. So July 4th, 1776, of course, we all know that means, if you're into astrology, that our nation is a Cancerian nation, July 4th. We're a Cancer nation.
Yeah, to be more exact, that's when that Congress voted to declare independence from
right.
the Brits.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And that Cancer nation, that July-August time period of Cancer and Leo every year, that's when essentially children and families come together. School is over and kids come together, and when a baby is born as a Cancer, it's about mommy, daddy, family. It's really it's the essence of the family,
And home.
the nuclear family, let's
Yes.
say. So the U.S. being a Cancerian nation implies that we are sort of a nation of family and the nuclear family, which is interesting these days, considering so many things are happening politically. We'll discuss today a little bit, like Roe v. Wade, women's rights, the family, where the family is going, nuclear family. So a really key thing, Sheila, that stands out for me always with the U.S. chart is that we have that Cancer sun and that Pluto in the opposite sign, Capricorn, when our nation was born, July 4th, 1776. It says our nation was born, Sun in Cancer, opposite Pluto, in opposition to plutonium, in opposition to plutocracy, I meant to say, in opposition to plutocrats, in opposition to dictatorship and monarchy.
So, authoritarian rule. We want to be independent from others telling us what to do and decide for ourselves.
That's it, right? That our nation of family values is a direct opposition to monarchic dominance. That's what this chart says. That's one of the things that leaps off the page. The other thing that stands out with the U.S. chart, Sheila, is that we have a Cancer water emotion, water sign, water season, Cancer, July. A water sign, sun sign of Cancer, and a moon in the sign of Aquarius. In a nation's chart, the moon describes the people, the individual populace of the nation, where the sun, in this case Cancer, describes the spirit of the nation. The moon describes the populace, the people of a nation. By the way, astrologically speaking, because astrology always is just a mirror, these cycles are always typically mirroring what's unfolding for an individual or for a nation. We've had the planets Pluto, plutocracy, and Saturn, patriarchy, crossing over the U.S. moon these last couple of years. And of course, coincident with that happening, an astrologer could have, if you will, predicted this. It says that the rights of the populace, the rights of moon, think of moon cycle, think of women, the rights of women are in some ways reconstructed or constrained. Saturn, patriarchy, patriarchal constraint. Well, Roe v. Wade.
Yes, we've seen evidence of that.
Yeah, the reversal. Who could have thought?
Yeah.
In 50 years of Roe v. Wade suddenly being reversed by the Supreme Court. So this is kind of a big standout in the U.S. chart. That moon on the one side with Pluto in the U.S. chart opposite the sun and the sign of Cancer. So the question might arise, what are the cycles, Alexander and Sheila, for this election, this upcoming election?
Yeah.
What stands out here is that we are having transiting in the sky Jupiter in the sign of Gemini within 1 degree conjunction right on top of the US Mars. Jupiter cycles, Sheila, happen for all of us, individuals at age 12, 24, 36. So Jupiter cycles coincide, Sheila, with the cycles of expansion.
And then with it butting up against that Mars, what does that mean?
It's suggesting that for the US, expansion of martial efforts like martial militaristic efforts, well, we certainly see that ramping up with Ukraine, ramping up with our involvement in the Middle East, ramping up with Iran, ramping up with with Russia and Vladimir Putin. So we're having this powerful Jupiter cycle at this time of this election, 2024, on the US Mars. Expansion of militaristic force is one thing. We're also gearing up, Sheila, next year, 25, that Jupiter returns to where it was when we were born as a nation. We're having another Jupiter return, happens every 12 years. But of course, this is a particular powerful 12-year Jupiter return for the US. So we're having Jupiter in Cancer, our home sign, our nation sign, next year, 2025. So Jupiter again cycles of expansion, beautifully expanding in Cancer next year after the election, after the inauguration of this president.
And with it in Cancer, that means it's going to be more focused again on family.
The spirit of the family, of the nation. That's right. That is the idea. What's beautiful about this election day of 2024, November 5 of 2024 for our election day, is this transiting Jupiter, conjunct that US Mars, so it's action and maybe military action, that Jupiter is in beautiful configuration, a trine configuration to that US moon in Aquarius. It says expansion of the feminine, maybe even martial or active expansion of the feminine. And gosh, I would say, you know, as we're taping this program here at the end of July 2024, what we see with Kamala's progress in her campaign, it certainly is galvanizing women, galvanizing the feminine. That's what's happening right now.
Yes.
So this election chart of 2024 has that Jupiter. It also, Sheila, has something else. And I'm looking at that Uranus approaching the natal Uranus of the US chart. We will be having, folks, a Uranus return, an 84-year cycle for humans, a Uranus return on the US chart, literally beginning when Uranus ingresses into Gemini in 2025. So we've got Jupiter on Mars and Cancer next year. We've got Uranus returning, which is a revolution. Uranus, the planet of revolution, discovered during the French and American revolutions. So Uranus cycles are revolutionary, right on the US chart simultaneously. So it says this is a politically revolutionary time.
So it's very important that we elect someone to lead us in a direction that benefits us or makes it, because we have a lot of changes coming up.
That's right.
Again, because we've seen this before.
We've seen this before. You know, by happenstance, I was sort of looking at different cycles of this election day, Sheila, and I was sort of stumbling around. I thought, gee, you know, I'm thinking about cycles that we see as astrologers that have us think about the 30s, what was happening in the 30s, what was happening as we were heading into World War II, for instance, when there was a great deal of events surrounding our Pluto in our chart and plutocracy around the world, as we're having right now in the US chart, the US having a Pluto return, a 248-year cycle, our first national Pluto return, 240, basically our nation's 248 years old. So Pluto's come back to where it was when we were born. That's always significant. Pluto cycles describe death and rebirth. And of course, we're having a massive review, death and rebirth. But I went back and did a little historical review too, to that World War II period, and stumbled upon something since I'm not a political astrologer really, I looked at the fact that the last time we had this Jupiter in Gemini with Uranus return was during the attack of Pearl Harbor.
Oh boy.
So when we think about this election, and all of us know the stakes are high, all of us know it's a powerful time, all of us know that this is, a big deal.
Mhm.
Um, we can corroborate that astrologically by saying, gee, when's the last time we had Jupiter and Uranus together on the US chart in the exact same or very almost exact same degree places? I mean, it's uncanny. It almost is exactly the same. This election day, Jupiter 20 degrees of Gemini, right on the US Mars, Uranus 25 Taurus. Pearl Harbor, that was Jupiter at 16 degrees of Gemini. Right now it's 20. Uranus at 27 Taurus. Right now Uranus is 25. Pretty darn close to exactly the arrangement we had when we entered World War II. And when you and I were prepping the show, I think you laid out sort of an exclamation of concern.
Yes, that we don't want that to happen again. So
Well, you were
it's
asking me,
yeah.
you were asking me what, that is there something Jupiterianly positive or up?
Yes, yeah. What we don't, no one wants war. What can we do to make sure we don't have these repeats even of these cycles? I mean, these cycles are saying this coming, so how do we prep ourselves or
Right, we're having the same cycle
yeah.
now during this election 2024 that we had with those two planets, Jupiter and Uranus, respectively, that we had when Japan attacked in Pearl Harbor. How can we get a different view? What can we create? In other words, what can we be mindfully creating as a nation?
Yeah.
Is what you're asking. How can we apply this energy, these cycles positively? Jupiter are positive cycles of growth. Uranus are positive cycles of not only revolution but evolution. Precisely right. So we're in a time right now for evolution. But if this evolutionary cycle were to go differently, we could certainly have challenges, more than challenges. But the positive you asked about, if we have the same Jupiter Uranus that we had during the Pearl Harbor situation at the beginning of the U.S. entering World War II, how on earth can we look at that through a positive lens? Our entering World War II definitively changed the course of that war. The U.S. entering World War II definitively changed the course uh, and quashed dictatorship worldwide. So the positive is freedom, liberation, liberating France, liberating Europe collectively. We're in a situation right now with Ukraine that we are attempting to, without being directly involved, help to liberate Europe essentially once again.
Yes.
People suggest that if Russia continues to conquer and does conquer Ukraine, Russia might not stop there. So we have a similar dynamic here for coming together as a nation, as we did when we entered World War II. We had the same positive Jupiter cycle going through that sector of the US chart that deals with partnering with Ukraine, partnering with Finland, partnering with NATO, partnering with Europe, partnering with Eastern Europe. These are things that are absolutely powerfully on the table right now. And there's a lot of discussion too. While it appears Iran are definitely not our partners right now, during the Obama administration, there was, even if it was roundabout, some suggest it was a recipe for disaster, but we never found out which way it would go. We attempted to bring Iran sort of into partnership. I can tell you one thing we do know. Those of us who have friends, connections with anyone who's from Iran, the youth of Iran do not want the old guard ways to continue. The youth of Iran want to regain their progressive system that they had in the 70s, that of course was crushed by the Ayatollah going back a few decades. So the cycles we have now with Jupiter Uranus, revolutionary partnering, is what is highlighted in the U.S. chart.
And evolution. So there, if we make sure we elect a leader that will be able to help us through these cycles, better off we will be.
Indeed. So I thought also too, Sheila, that we might want to look at Kamala's chart on election day and Donald Trump's chart on election day. Donald Trump is a Gemini sun sign. Jupiter's cycle coincides with cycles of personal expansion, usually career and goal expansion. Jupiter right now is in the sign of Gemini. Donald Trump is a Gemini. Astrology 101, basic astrology. A new student of astrology would say, well, gee, if Jupiter is cycles of successful expansion and Jupiter is right on top of Donald Trump's sun, that must mean he's going to win this election. And folks, it is concerning. That is real concerning during this time of this election when we have Jupiter right on Donald Trump's sun, when we have transiting Mercury heading retrograde around the time of this election, when we have transiting Mars stationing retrograde itself not long, I think about a month after the election. Transiting Mars stations retrograde. It stations retrograde right on the US chart at Mars. Mars stations retrograde right on Donald Trump's Pluto and his Venus, off by a few degrees. Some astrologers say it's too far off. But as a backyard astronomer, as an astronomer, astrologer myself, I say no. That transiting Mars retrograde station that happens December 7th, interesting, December 7th,
No. Oh, boy.
2024, this year, December 7th. Gee, that date, December 7th. Gee, December 7th, what does that bring to mind? Oh, yeah,
Just talked about
Pearl
that.
Harbor. Yeah, Mars stations retrograde on Pearl Harbor Day this year, right on the US chart, right on Donald Trump's chart, right on Donald Trump's Pluto Mars. I call it a conjunction in Donald Trump's chart. Yeah, gee, does that sound concerning, folks? Pluto is stationing retrograde, stopping in the sky from an earthbound observer's point of view, right on Donald Trump's Venus. That's an issue of love from the people, perhaps, right on his Pluto. Mars, plutonium, right on his Mars. This is an explosive recipe that we have with Donald Trump's chart. Donald Trump's chart, honestly, is
Explosive meaning he will make things explosive.
well, we do know he'll make things
Yes.
explosive one way or another. Donald Trump's chart is well slated, unfortunately, from my perspective, um, regarding this 2024 election. Why do I say unfortunately? I won't get off on this topic too far down this rabbit hole, but anyone can see Donald Trump's chart. A big bundle chart with the moon all by itself. A big bundle chart with his sun opposing his moon. A big bundle chart. Donald Trump was born during a lunar eclipse where the shadow of earthly materialism eclipsed his emotions and his mother and his family. This theme of eclipsing women. You got it, folks? So Donald Trump's chart, I mean, really, listen, let's put aside nonsensical sort of banter or even being neutral. I don't like to be neutral when the house is on fire. I want to say, holy cow, there's smoke, and then I see flames. The house is on fire. Enough being neutral. Time to do something. This chart of Donald Trump is the chart of a narcissist. We know that. It is really literally true. Astrologically, a chart of a narcissist. His whole chart and bundle opposing his moon. Kamala's chart, by contrast, interestingly, has a pattern in it that's called a grand rectangle with Kamala's sun, Kamala's Mars, Kamala's Saturn, Kamala's moon in Aries, a grand rectangle. We saw that in Robert Asciagioli. I think there might be a grand rectangle, Sheila, in the chart of Carl Jung as well. This promises somebody who can think, if you will, outside the box.
Okay.
Outside the box, the person who has the capacity to do sort of seen from many different perspectives at once, that grand rectangle, where Donald Trump has everything in his chart bundled opposite that moon, if you will. That moon is a handle, is a singleton.
Women, which we see him operating.
That's right. So Kamala's chart on election day, that has some interesting positive juju. She's got Uranus on her Jupiter, Jupiter on her ascendant. There are some really powerful positive things that have a lot of astrologers saying she's going to win without a doubt. However, Kamala is also having that Neptune Saturn right on her career angle of her chart, which is challenging. So there are as many positives in Kamala's election day chart as there are challenges. However, I would say the challenges might outweigh the positives. So a key factor, Sheila, of this election day chart on Kamala's chart is a theme of partnership. Kamala's partnership area of her chart is super highlighted around election day, and therefore
Partnership with the moon there and that.
the transiting
So-
moon Venus, yeah,
Again, if moon is representing women and family, those
those themes are highlighted.
highlighted,
in
yes.
Kamala, of
Mhm.
course. She'd be the first female president. She'd be the first female president of color, right? Those are big factors.
And her husband will be the first
He'll be the first husband.
husband.
Talk about revolution.
Yeah.
There's a positive
And evolution.
Evolutionary, wonderful. She likes that. Evolutionary revolution will be Kamala and the first husband. The great potential is there, folks. I also say that means that who Kamala chooses as her running mate is extraordinarily important to Kamala winning this election. If she's going to win, who she chooses is extraordinarily important. And again, that P word that I don't like to throw around, I like to look at astrology as being cycles. And that I always say, that your birth chart is sort of like the backdrop. Your birth chart is the roadmap of your life, but you're driving the car.
Right.
So that's why I look at our charts as cycles, including a national chart. But I'm going to use that P word, prediction. I hate that word. It's not a good word. It implies that we're not free will minded and cooperative here in creating our world. But that P word, I'm saying tongue in cheek, folks, that I have here, depending on who Kamala
Partners with as a
VP,
VP.
I think it's going to be Mark Kelly. I went to look at Mark Kelly's chart. Mark Kelly's chart, in my opinion, is not well suited at this particular time. The cycles in Mark Kelly's chart are not overly fantastic about what might happen for him individually. I don't know that his personal chart will necessarily define this election, but it is concerning. It's not a great looking situation for Mark Kelly, but I think they're going to. I predict, I say jokingly, Sheila, they're going to bring Mark Kelly in.
Well, we'll see. It's coming up shortly. One factor you said, we have free will. So with that moon over there in her house,
The transiting on election day.
The election day moon, does that also signify if women get out to vote for her, that would also play positive for Kamala?
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, truly, if we had a landslide effort of women and people of color to come out for this election, I mean, you don't need an astrologer to figure that one out. It would be a landslide. It would be a game changer unequivocally, right? So you and I individually are talking to family members and friends, and we're just trying to shake the trees to really.
We have to be part of the destiny of our country, and that is by voting. And we don't want to lose those rights by becoming a dictatorship. So I would like for our country to maintain our democracy.
Yeah, and I think we can say, folks, a dictatorship under Donald Trump. Trump's chart says it. Trump's chart is a classic chart of a dictator. Trump has plutocrats, dictatorial plutocrats rising on his Mars war, conjunct his Leo ascendant. Donald Trump has 29 Leo rising. That is the fixed star Regulus. It is the royal star of the four royal stars of Egypt. It's one of those key stars that talks about the turning of the seasons, but it's particularly that star of monarchy and royalty, meaning Donald Trump sees himself that way.
Yeah.
Donald Trump has Mars on that star. It says he sees himself as a military dictator, a military leader. Now, Donald Trump was not even militarily involved. Am I mistaken on this one? Did he serve in the military? Yeah, no, I don't think he did. Yet, his chart says, folks, that he sees himself as a military leader, military dictator. He tells us that Europe other nations will ride all over Kamala if she is the president. I think that's not at all the case. I'm concerned actually that Donald Trump's chart says what we already know. People say he will join. He admires dictators, and we're at a time and a phase and a cycle that we had when we had the beginning of World War II. It's unfolding right now. When we actually entered World War II, we have similar cycles. some exact same cycles as, in fact, Pearl Harbor Day when Japan attacked, is or concordance with
Yes,
this
we
election day.
mentioned that.
So, right, we don't want to have explosiveness being focused upon. I'm looking at Kamala's chart now, and I would say Kamala's chart talks about her own evolution. This would be a time period with her own evolutionary shift, her own evolutionary upliftment. Kamala's chart on election day has Jupiter in the sky crossing over her north node and her ascendant. The north node is sort of where one's dharma is, fulfilling one's sort of destiny, one's potential. And when you move toward your dharma, your north node in your birth chart, you move toward your destiny. Jupiter is expansion of destiny in Kamala's chart. So if she were to be elected president, the mission statement would be expanding her destiny in effect.
And the destiny of our country. So if we go back to when our nation was born, if you say,
July 4th, 1776.
what hope do we? Well, my thing is the people have the power, and the people need to use their power to make sure we have the country that we want to continue to live in.
Indeed. And so, again, the Jupiter return upcoming at the end of this year, 24, into 25, Jupiter cycles are about cycles of expansion. The cycles of expansion are right on the US chart, particularly in the area of partnering and partnerships. Then the issue is, how can we better rise and create ascension for ourselves, evolution, as you said, for the US through partnerships? It definitely will be embracing our European partners, for instance, rather than in any way pushing them away. So in closing, number one, in closing, what should we say? Vote. Get out there and
Yes,
vote.
vote.
Number one.
Vote.
Number two, convince all those people that you know feel that the rights of women, the rights of family, the focus on family, the fact that our nation is about family values,
That's right.
that is where our focus should be. Yes, corporations run the world, but maybe we should even ask ourselves, should they really? You know, I kind of go back to the Reaganomics when they gave corporations the rights of individual people, and things began to really shift in a very plutocratic way. And here we are. So the theme of women and women's rights
and
family rights and choice
and everyday working American rights. Let's get back to evolutionizing that so that you can support your family with one job, and that you can have basic needs taken care of, that you're not wiped out by a medical emergency. Or
so really it comes down to this Jupiter cycle, this election cycle with a Jupiter return, Jupiter heading into the sign of Cancer next year. It's about reaffirming the values and the reason that we came together, that we founded this nation to begin with. So that's our parting thoughts. Thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you again on YouTube, and please listen for and watch our program again.
yes, thank you, and vote.